Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Sunday evening to you all. I hope you guys are doing well out there tonight and certainly had yourselves a fantastic weekend, as unfortunately we come to the end of another weekend, about to head off into a work week. I got you an update on the tropics tonight. We'll discuss what is soon to be Hurricane Nigel, still a tropical storm at this point, at this time, but will become a hurricane sometime tonight into tomorrow morning. And then we'll discuss the fact that we have a tropical wave that will emerge off the west coast of Africa into the tropical Atlantic sometime in the next 48 hours, and we'll have a chance to develop into our next named storm, which will be Ophelia, the O name of the 2023 hurricane list of names. And then, who knows, we could potentially sneak a name in off a stalled, a boundary, a cold front that's moving across the eastern U.S. So eventually will become a stalled boundary across Florida, areas of the Gulf of Mexico, and off the coast of the southeast. This stalled boundary can pop off some energy and maybe develop a weak tropical or subtropical system. So we'll discuss that too. We'll discuss all this in this video and keep you guys aware of what's going on. We will continue to pump out the content. If you folks have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. If you ever consider joining the channel, there should be a join tab somewhere on your screen, whether it's below the video on my actual YouTube header. If you're watching this from a phone, it's almost impossible to find unless you do some crazy stuff that will take entirely too much time. But I just want to say thank you to the folks that are already members to my channel. I have around 41, 42 incredible members that support my channel unconditionally every single month. So I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for you folks that are members to the channel. If you ever consider becoming a member, it's just, like I said, a great way to support what I do monthly. One of these days I will incorporate perks into the channel. That will probably come when I can do this full time. I can put more time into making this channel much better for you guys as the audience. And trust me, I have big goals, but I'm following God's path on what he has on my life, and whether that's YouTube or not, I'm sure that he will let me know, just like he lets all of us know as we make our journey through life. If you guys got anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put it in the comments below. And I know I mentioned the members thing. I do want you guys to know, if you're not members, just because you're not members, I don't mean that I don't appreciate and love you guys. It's always very uncomfortable with me talking about joining the channel. It's not a topic that I like talking about on much. But I just want to let you guys know that aren't members, that comment every single day, that like the video, that are subscribed, that view the channel. I want to say thank y'all, because you guys also make this channel what it is, which is a family type atmosphere. And I love you and appreciate you very much. That's 3 minutes of an intro. Let's talk about the weather now. All right, so let's get the clicker ready. This is Nigel spinning around. We're not going to talk on Nigel a whole lot because he's just going to do nothing but really bother the fish on the surface of the ocean out here. We basically got a naked swirl out there, which is Margot. Margot is pretty much void of any kind of shower or storm development. Just like I said, a naked low-level swirl, and eventually Margot won't even be really considered anything at any point. So Lee has pretty much made its way up into eastern Canada. I hope you folks are certainly faring well up there and didn't get any kind of crazy impacts. I know a lot of people were out power, but based off the comments, I'm not seeing anything that was catastrophic or anything. But you guys certainly let me know what the kind of the final outcome was for you folks in New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, and certainly in Newfoundland. We got a wave right here over North Africa still that will emerge off the west coast of Africa and eventually make its way into this region right into here and have a chance to develop. This will most likely be our next named storm, which is Ophelia. And then we got a boundary, which it's not, it's a cold front right now. I need to stop calling that. It technically still is a boundary because it separates moist air with dry air, but eventually this will become a stalled boundary, separating that moist and dry air. But this is making its way in right now. It's right along this area right here. You got a lot of shower and storm development right into here, because pretty much everybody in that circled area is still on the moist side of this boundary. But eventually, this will continue to make its way and eventually stall out somewhere into here. And then some energy can get sparked off this boundary right into here, depending on where it is. Along that boundary and just south and east of it is where you're going to have shower and storms. If you're just north of that boundary, you got drier, stable air. So it's basically going to stall out over portions of the warm Atlantic Ocean, which can spark some juice to some of these showers and storms, and eventually you can get like a low-level circulation that gets going and a weak tropical system. So that's what's going on. For you folks in like the deep south, mid-south, you guys are going to wake up to a beautiful fall-like air mass tomorrow, more than likely, because you got a lot of dry air filtering in, and chances are you're going to wake up temperatures in the low 60s into the 50s. So enjoy that for your Monday morning. It'll be a great kickstart for your work week. But let's keep on going. We got this area has a 40% chance to develop in the next 7 days. This will most likely become our next named storm. Most model guidance agrees that this is going to develop into a full-fledged tropical depression or storm. We got Nigel. It's a 65-mile-per-hour tropical storm. Will likely become a hurricane sometime tonight into tomorrow morning. Margot, which is a post-tropical cyclone. We don't expect much more from Margot or Lee. Lee is completely weakening at this point, and soon these will not even be on the National Hurricane Site anymore for us to even really mention. So Nigel is strengthening, though. We take a look at Nigel. Not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. It looks like a strong tropical storm on its way to become a hurricane. Definitely got a nice symmetrical look to it and a nice swirl to it, popping off those higher cloud tops, which indicates deep convection, stronger updrafts. So it's definitely in the stages of steadily strengthening at this point. So latest cone for Nigel, forecast to become a hurricane tonight, then eventually a major hurricane, Category 3 status or higher, sometime in the next probably, I would say, 36 hours. Should maintain major hurricane status potentially for about 24 hours. But this could change. It might not even make it a Category 3 status. But eventually we'll make that turn north sometime midway this week, and eventually northeast, and then begin to pick up a lot of speed before eventually fading away into oblivion up here into the North Atlantic where there's colder waters. But moving northwest at 13 miles per hour at this point. So we'll continue to move here. First off, we're going to talk about this energy that could pop off the stalling cold front that will stall out over areas of the Gulf of Mexico, Florida, and off the coast of the southeast. So this is the water vapor loop. This indicates moist air and drier air. So you can see where this deep digging trough is with this associated cold front. You see this area right into here? It's basically separating white with kind of a dark gray or just almost a black color. That kind of more dull looking color right into here, that is our drier air mass making its way through. You see this surge of kind of southerly flow or southwesterly flow into Georgia, South Georgia, the Carolinas, up into Virginia, all the way up into the northeast. That is more moist air, but this drier air is making its way in. Eventually, this drier air will get all the way down here, and you're going to get this boundary that's probably going to stall out somewhere into here. Then it's going to pivot back and forth, eventually moving a little bit further north. Okay, I think this dry air is definitely going to make it all the way to northern areas of Florida. And this dry air that moves in, speaking outside the tropics, is going to bring a beautiful work week for most of the southeast and eastern U.S. So prepare for your first full nice week of early fall-like weather. I'm having a hard time speaking in this video for sure. I've had to start over a few times because I keep twisting my words up. So you guys bear with me. I'm just going to keep rolling. But this is the feature. This kind of boundary right here is separating dry and moist air that's eventually going to kickstart some convection off the coast of the southeast. All right, let's take a look at the GFS and how it shows this unfolding. So we'll start this off Wednesday morning. At this point, dry air has already surged down to northern areas of Florida. But look at this blob of green, yellow, and red right here. Watch as it kind of dances around on top of Florida because this cold front never makes it through Florida. So if you're in Orlando, Point South, Tampa Bay, you guys are going to have certainly a rainy and stormy week ahead of you guys. But we keep this going. We're getting into Thursday morning, and look at this blob right off the coast. I'm just going to call it a blob until it pops off that L. We keep this going, and eventually it does. Look, there's that L. There's that low pressure popping off. We're getting into Friday morning, September the 22nd. And watch what happens. We're getting into Friday afternoon, Friday evening. Look at this. First off, it's 1,004 millibar low pressure. I would argue this might be a weak tropical depression, weak tropical storm. Could this take the name Ophelia? There I go, mixing my words up. Could this take the name Ophelia before that tropical wave out there in the tropical Atlantic coming off the west coast of Africa? It very well could. The next name after Ophelia is Philippe. So we have to see what happens with that. But this is going to be an interesting thing to watch right off the coast of the Southeast here in the coming days for sure. And I live here in South Carolina, so I'm going to be watching this like a hawk. And if you got any outdoor activities in the Southeast, you want to watch this too. But this is Friday evening. You got a big plume of tropical air and basically tropical range right off the coast of the Carolinas. Now, there could be a lot of dry air really close by. So this tropical system could very well be subtropical, and kind of like what happened with Lee, might lack true tropical characteristics because so much of those drier, cooler elements really close by. Could get a lot of dry air wrapped into it. We got to see what happens. There's a lot to figure out, but let's keep this going. We get into Saturday morning. This pushes a big plume of moisture right into eastern North Carolina. You'd wake up to just a steady soaking rain if this was to happen in eastern North Carolina. But look at this low pressure still trying to strengthen, and eventually whatever this is makes landfall sometime Saturday right into the low country of South Carolina, but throws really slingshots a lot of moisture all the way up into the mid-Atlantic. Okay, so this could definitely impact any activities this weekend across the southeast of the mid-Atlantic. So eventually makes landfall and then fades away. European, how does it show this? Kind of the same thing. We get into Wednesday, get into Thursday. Look at this big blob of tropical moisture off the coast of the southeast. Most model guidance shows this forming on the east side, off the southeast coastline, not into the Gulf of Mexico. Okay? But here it is. Here's that low pressure forming Friday morning, and there's a lot of moisture right off the coast of the southeast. But it definitely looks different than the GFS. It doesn't have this getting pushed in quite yet, but as we are getting into Saturday morning, we got a lot of moisture right into the Delmarva area. But the Euro really never gets this going and pushes it inland. Therefore, you don't really have any high impact weather. Now, it does try to develop it way up here off the coast of New Jersey or Delaware or the Maryland. All right, but it's kind of a wild scenario, and that's getting pretty far away. But the Euro does show a piece of energy trying to get going off the coast of the southeast. What does the latest icon show? Well, here we go. We're going to Wednesday, getting into Thursday. Here it is. Here it is, that L popping off here. Stalled frontal boundary. And here comes the big plume of moisture. As that boundary pretty much weakens, this moisture is able to surge north. It's just, does it surge inland or does it just surge over the open waters? And here it comes. And this is as far out as it goes. We got a low pressure off the coast of the southeast. What it looks like, if you were to keep this going, it would slingshot some moisture into the eastern Carolinas and southeast Virginia, maybe even portions of Delaware and Maryland eventually if you were to keep this going. But this only goes out 120 hours. So low pressure right off the coast of the southeast. So a great way to look at this here is pretty much the green, moist air. The brown is dry air. So watch this. This is starting off right now. Dry air begins to take over all the Gulf states, all the deep south and the southeast. All right, we're getting into Monday afternoon, tomorrow afternoon. We're getting into Tuesday morning. Let's stop it right here. This is Tuesday afternoon. A lot of dry air, even over northern areas of Florida. All right, over the entire southeast. But look at this tight gradient between dry air and moist air right here. That is pretty much where your stalled frontal boundary is going to be. So watch as this kind of pushes up against each other. They kind of fight one another over the next couple days into midway this week. Okay? All of a sudden, a lot of this dry air begins to kind of somewhat shrink down and not really be as dry. And all of a sudden, you get a lot of green right here, that moist air off the coast of Florida and the Carolinas and Georgia that begins to kind of ball up. And here it goes. All of this, what's left over of this dry air from that cold front gets basically slung over here. And you get a big area, a big plume of moist air that begins to develop. And here it is on the GFS, shows it well. You freeze it right here. Okay, I think this is a great example right here. All right, this is this coming Friday night. See all this dry air getting wrapped into this broad area of circulation right here? See how dry air is actually getting pulled into Texas and then wrapped into the circulation of this storm. And you got all of this moist air right on here on the north side, on the west side of this system into Georgia. Doesn't this look kind of familiar from Lee to this? So to me, this screams subtropical or post-tropical, okay? Extratropical. This is subtropical. It's called subtropical. So that's what this screams to me, which means that I don't think this is going to be a true tropical system if it develops with a lot of dry air around that gets wrapped into that circulation. It's something to watch here. Look at the dry air wrapped all the way into the center of circulation. It's very, very odd look here. It does not look like a full-fledged tropical system. So that's something to watch. Okay? Going to be an interesting storm. Really is if it develops. So, but a great way to see this is, yep, okay, we got it up, 18Z. Areas in the yellow you see on your screen, think of that as energy. The more vibrant the colors, like in the orange and red, think of that as stronger energy or more well put together energy. And watch here as we get into Thursday afternoon, you see these more vibrant colors right here. And if you look at the wind barbs, they begin to spin together. You see these wind barbs spinning like this now. This is a big, broad area spin right into here, beginning to develop. Very broad. Not that tight, not that strong at this point, but this is a clear sign of energy off the latest GFS really getting going here, and eventually it consolidates and then moves inland into the low country of South Carolina, areas of Georgia. So it's pretty much a perfect example of it. Front comes down, energy stalls out over off the coast of the southeast and eventually develops and then gets pushed right back inland. Okay, so this will be something to watch this week. It certainly will be. I would not be surprised if the Hurricane Center puts an area of interest in this area and sometime in the next few updates. Honestly, I thought they would have already done it. This is the next area to watch. Has a 40% chance to develop. This will likely become a named storm. I'm pretty confident in it. It's just the fact that does it become Ophelia? There we go. Or Philippe. Which one will it be? All right, you guys know I like to mess up words, so definitely correct me if I mess it up. That's what the breakdown on the 2023 hurricane punctuation list said to sound it off. Ophelia. Okay, I think it's Ophelia. Yeah. So enough of that. 40% chance to develop in the next 7 days. We take a look at what's going on out here in the eastern Atlantic, and here's the wave. It's still over Africa. This huge piece of energy, area of showers and storms, will eventually get over the open water of the eastern tropical Atlantic, and then it will immediately begin to try to get its act together and eventually will develop. The upper wind pattern certainly supports development of a tropical system, and you still got the warmer sea surface temperatures out here. So it's still peak season out here for the main development region, but we're starting to get to that time of the year. Once we start to get to late September, really what we call the MDR, the main development region, which is the tropical Atlantic between the Leeward Islands and basically the west coast of Africa, that part of the season begins to shut down. But we're not quite there yet. But here comes the wave. We'll look at the latest GFS right here and what it does with this. We'll start off Wednesday morning. Here it comes. Immediately looks like a pretty stout tropical wave. Stays pretty low in latitude. It's a low rider. And on the latest run, it remains pretty weak, which is definitely not what the run did it before. This is the run at 12Z. Had this already at a hurricane out here in the central tropical Atlantic. The latest run only has it at a 1010 millibar low pressure. That's a substantial difference from one run to the next. Okay? A weaker storm will allow it to move more east to west for longer. In fact, GFS just struggles to develop this altogether on the latest run. Eventually develops it here, and looks like it gets trapped over some ridging, and doesn't develop it until around October 1st. So the latest GFS is a wild, might be a fluke run. If we look at the 12Z GFS, which I would argue that it does not get this strong this fast, but the 12Z GFS turns this thing into an all-out Category 2 hurricane by early next week and begins to gain latitude. But this starts to get 11 to 12 days out. So definitely a fluky change on the GFS. Is it on to something? It very well could be. We look at the latest Euro on this system, and here it comes. We're getting into Thursday morning, getting into Friday morning, and we're starting to have a developing tropical depression, weak tropical storm at this point. Could be Ophelia, could be Philippe. We got to figure that one out. Depending on what this piece of energy does off the coast of the southeast, we're getting into this weekend, and it says we will have a named storm by this coming Saturday morning. It says we'll have a tropical storm. Sorry, guys, my bad. You know that happens every once in a while. Thank you for anybody who said bless you. But let's keep this rolling. Got a tropical storm over the tropical Atlantic out here, and this is continuing to strengthen. By the time we get into basically this time, basically a week from right now, 180 hours out, a week from today, we have a full-fledged Category 1, Category 2 hurricane making its way across the main development tropical Atlantic region. Okay, this is getting closer at this point, and we'll take it all the way out to 10 days out, which is next Wednesday morning, September the 27th. And we have a major hurricane well northeast of the Leeward Islands, and it looks like it's beginning to gain some latitude. So latest GEFS ensemble guidance from this, I think this is from 12Z. Let's see if we got any information from 18Z. And I don't know if we do. Looks like we only go 120 hours out. But does show that signal, but it's kind of everywhere. Okay, if we go and look at the 12Z, which I think is a better one to look at here. We look at the 12Z, and let's go 1 week out. Right here. This site is available to you guys at the public too. This is a free site, weathernerds.com. It's a tricky site to use, but once you get a hang of it, it's awesome. But shows a pretty sloppy signal for some kind of tropical system out here. It's having a hard time figuring out which piece of energy it wants to latch onto. But in general, that's a pretty medium signal of something happening with this wave that's going to come off the west coast of Africa. You look at the European ensemble, a much stronger signal. This is basically takes us out 1 week, and this is a pretty strong signal for, at minimum, a named storm out here. Approaching, getting closer, or at least getting closer to that kind of area just northeast of the Leeward Islands, 1 week from today. This is a pretty solid signal. You have many members out of 51 members showing a legit tropical storm or hurricane out there 1 week from today. So one reason that the GFS, and let's just talk about the 12Z GFS first. One reason that the 12Z GFS really kind of wants to move north very fast is because the GFS makes this, and we're only going to speak on the 12Z GFS right here because I think it's a great example of how a stronger system is going to want to turn north very fast. So it really wants to develop this quick. All right, we take it into about Sunday morning. This is an all-out hurricane at this point, this little blue area. The blue is low pressure, the orange is high pressure. The flow works around both of these features differently. So this system right now, which is a hurricane at this point, so a stronger tropical system, it has some pretty weak ridging up here. So it's going to immediately feel that weakness, and when it does, this is a wide open weakness for this to make an abrupt turn north and basically try to head on out to sea and not affect anybody. Okay, one, because it's a stronger system. Two, you don't have this ridging, which the flow goes like this around this ridging. You don't have this ridging over this system anymore. You have a wide open white area, which is a weakness in the pattern, and it's going to fill that weakness, and then it will begin to work its way north, and that's exactly what it does. All right, now some ridging tries to build on top of this hurricane that the GFS is saying is going to be right here. You see how the orange is surrounding it? Watch immediately when the orange surrounds it. It looks like it's about to move on out to sea. Immediately ridging tries to build on top of this. This begins to slow that northern turn here, and kind of begins to bog down somewhat as it's influenced by that ridging. Then the ridging disappears again, and watch immediately when all this orange around it disappears, it immediately begins to turn back out to sea. It's pretty cool. I love this example of the GFS. So before, here it goes, you got some ridging right on top of it. See this little weak ridge right here? This is making this weaker storm kind of go like this, right? Get this back off your screen. Keep this going. This turns into a stronger system, and at the same time, this high pressure right here shifts further to the west. Therefore, it begins to sniff out this weakness, and when I turn, all right, that weakness opens up even more, and you keep going, and there it goes, makes that turn. But Sorry guys, that was the first time I've ever ran out of storage in the middle of the video, so if you had a little cut break there, that was why. So let's keep talking on this, and we're going to wrap up the rest of this video. But like I was saying here, this gets called this ridge basically builds around what would be Ophelia or either Philippe, and when it does, it begins to slow down and prevent it from abruptly continuing to turn north, and then actually forces it to move more west again. But immediately that ridge begins to weaken once again. It has a wide open weakness, and at this point it's a major hurricane trying to move back north. And in fact, it's trying to sniff out that weakness here between this ridge and this massive ridge right over areas of eastern Canada, and then it's going to head on out to sea. So I would say with this system, there is a decent chance that this becomes a fish storm. But I wouldn't say it's as high as a chance as Nigel was, which pointed to being a fish storm the entire time. If you guys don't know what a fish storm is, it's basically a hurricane that develops that doesn't bother anybody but the fish out in the North Atlantic. So we normally call those systems that recurve out into to the North Atlantic fish storms that don't bother anybody on any kind of landmass. Another way to look at this is the European. The Euro is a little different. It keeps this a weaker storm for a little bit longer. Therefore, it follows the flow around this weak ridging right here. And because this system is so weak at this point, as we're getting into this weekend, it can still feel the weakness. Even though it's a pretty weak ridge of high pressure, it can still feel the flow at the bottom of this high pressure here. And it does. And it continues to move more so east to west. So we get this back and we keep this going. Now the system does eventually strengthen. And as it does, as we're getting into around a week from today, all right, it continues to try to nudge more so west-northwest, okay? But as it becomes more of a powerful system, it begins to nudge north, and we get to the final frame of the European, and there is a weakness here, and it already is beginning to see that weakness right there, and it's beginning to head north between this area of high pressure and this area of high pressure. Now, we don't know what it's going to do 5 to 10 days out. We have a good idea, but we don't know for sure. But anything past 10 days, we don't know where high pressure or low pressure is going to be. So that's all I got. Sorry for the break in the video. That video was a struggle this evening, I'll be honest. Had to start over multiple times. A lot of people have asked me, why don't you go back and edit your video? Why don't you have any editing software? Well, editing takes a long time. That would take more additional time away from my family and just from things outside of YouTube. And unfortunately, I don't do this full time, so I don't have time to really upload the video and then go back to edit a bunch of stuff. And that's why everything comes at you guys raw. So the slip ups, it's all raw stuff. And once you get deep enough into a video and you do a slip up like 15 to 20 minutes into a video, man, there's no turning back at that point. So that's all I got, guys. Sorry for the sloppiness. It's going to happen every once in a while. But we'll continue to pump out this information. Thank y'all for the support. God bless. And you guys have a great rest of your weekend.